Hello everyone! We are coming at you live today to make my pumpkin cheesecake cookies. As always, I'm going to wait a little bit just to give people a little bit of time to join. Also, apologies, I realized this was scheduled for 9 a.m. today. I kind of like copied my live stream from last week to use as a base template, and I streamed at 9 last week because we had to fly somewhere, but today we're here at 10, back to our normally scheduled time. So I'm so sorry if any of you guys tried to tune in earlier, but now it is finally time to make our cookies. These cookies are so good. And one of the best parts about them is they actually like get better with time, almost like a fine wine. Literally, you can like pop them in the fridge and like 7 days in, they will taste just as good, if not better, than when they were like freshly baked out of the oven. I like eating these cookies cold. Like almost every cookie you think, oh, I want it nice and warm out of the oven with a glass of milk. But these cookies seriously are so good when they're cold. So that's just my personal tip on how to eat them. They are a little bit difficult to assemble. It's a little bit of a struggle to get them stuffed, but honestly, like even if you don't get them you don't get the dough to perfectly cover the cheesecake center, and there's like a little hole, or if there's like a little tear in the dough, just flip the cookie over. No one is going to see it. We'd end up dunking them in a cinnamon sugar mixture, and once they bake up, you really can't see any of those little cracks. So don't try too hard to get your cheesecake filling perfectly covered with these. Like, it's totally fine. They're going to taste amazing either way, and it's not worth stressing over. If you guys want to bake these with me right now, the recipe is up on chelsweets.com. You can Google Chel Sweets pumpkin cheesecake cookies and it should pop up. Or I've linked the recipe also in my stories on Instagram, so you can go ahead and click on the link there as well. And as you guys are tuning in, I would love to hear where you guys are tuning in from, and also your name. I love getting to say hi to you guys. As always, I'm Chelsea of Chel Sweets, and I'm here tuning in from Seattle, Washington. It's a little cloudy today, but it was sunnier this morning, and it was also raining this morning, so it's been kind of a whirlwind of weather, but it's definitely starting to feel like fall here, and today is the first official day of fall, so this is even more fitting. I was gonna wait to share this recipe until tomorrow, but I thought it would be so fun to make today. I'm also bringing these to a friend's house this weekend. She's having us over, and I figured this would be like a really fun treat to bring kind of as a dessert. Cause like this recipe really is a crowd pleaser unless you have something like really strongly against pumpkin or cheesecake. Sorry, that was my oven preheating. You're gonna love these cookies. They are just so freaking good. Okay, so without any further delay, let's go ahead and start. We're gonna whisk together our dry ingredients here. So I've got a large bowl, I'm gonna grab my large whisk, and we are gonna get to it. So as always, I am measuring my dry ingredients on my kitchen scale here. I find that for things like flour, it's so easy and so helpful to use a scale. You can definitely use a measuring cup as well, but if you're gonna do that, make sure that you're really fluffing up your flour, scooping it in, and then leveling it off. Otherwise, you're gonna pack in too much flour into your recipe, and it'll make your cookies turn out a little bit denser than they're supposed to. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're adding 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, or about 195 grams. And because I'm such a fan of using a scale, you guys, I always include both the cup measurements and the gram measurements in my recipes. So I'm always trying to encourage you guys to do what you feel most comfortable with. But if you do have a kitchen scale, it's like they're $16, and I've had mine for years. It's really a great kitchen tool to have, and I really highly recommend getting one if you don't have one already. All right. As always, I scooped a little bit too much flour in there, but no worries. We just scoop a little bit back out. So I scooped it, so we want it to be 195. This is also the stuff you don't see on the videos when I just perfectly pour things in and it's the exact right amount, but this is how baking actually is, at least for me. Hopefully I'm not alone in that. So we'll set our flour aside. That's the only flour we need in this recipe, so I'm gonna go ahead and pop it back under my cabinet here. And then we're gonna add in our baking soda and our warm spices. So we're gonna add in 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And baking soda is the leavening agent in a lot of cookies. And the reason for that is it kind of helps the cookies spread as they bake, so that you get kind of those the soft center and the crinkly edges, and it really gives the cookie a great texture, and that's why so many recipes use baking soda. Cookie recipes use baking soda. And then we're gonna add in our ground cinnamon here. We're also adding in a half a teaspoon of that. About 2 grams. So whenever it comes to things that have like really small measurements like this, the gram measurement is it's like 2 grams. I like to just use a scoop because it's a little bit easier to make sure that you're getting the right amount. And then we're gonna add in just a little bit of ground ginger and ground nutmeg. So for this, we're just using 1/4 of a teaspoon, like such a tiny amount, but you really wanna get all those spices in there because they add so much delicious flavor. If you don't have like all the spices, ground ginger, ground nutmeg, you can always use pumpkin pie spice, and you just want to take basically the total measurement of all the spices and use that. So in this recipe, since we have half a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 of a teaspoon ginger, and 1/4 of a teaspoon nutmeg, we would want to use 1 teaspoon pumpkin spice, or at least that's how I kind of like equate things in my head. So next we're going to add in our nutmeg and then our ground ginger. And if you don't bake a ton or you don't really like to do a ton of fall baking, the pumpkin spice method or route can be a little bit easier because you just have to get 1 ingredient instead of 4, and it'll stay, like, you'll probably go through it quicker, so it'll be fresh. Because you never want your spices to kind of like sit in your cupboard for too long because they really lose a lot of their flavor, which we want these to be nice and fresh and spicy and delicious. Okay, I'm also going to add, this is not in my recipe, but I like to add just a tiny little pinch of clove. So a pinch is really like less than 1/8 of a teaspoon, but these are just ground cloves. I love the way they taste, not everybody does, so that's why it's not in the recipe, and a lot of people don't have them on hand. And I try to keep my recipes as simple as possible, and they taste good without them still, but I like to add them just for a little bit of extra flavor. So we're gonna whisk this together quickly and just make sure those warm spices are really incorporated throughout our flour. And then we're gonna start to, oh, you know what, guys, I almost forgot, salt, a very important ingredient. I'm gonna add just 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And you always want it just a tiny bit of salt because it helps kind of balance out the sweetness of any recipe and really helps highlight the flavors. The same way some people add a little bit of sugar to their like tomato sauce. A little bit of sweetness and a little bit of salt really just helps enhance flavors in pretty much any recipe. So I guess another example of that is like I love cucumber salad, like the vinegary, dilly cucumber salad, and you always add a little bit of sugar to that and it makes it taste so much better. And that's because you want that balance. All right, so our dry ingredients are ready to go. We are going to set those aside now. And now it's time to cream together our butter and our sugars. So here I have 1 stick of unsalted butter. Again, you guys, you could use salted butter and omit the salt from your dry ingredients. The reason why a lot of recipes call for unsalted butter specifically is because that way you know exactly how much salt you're adding to a recipe. Because sometimes some brands of butter add slightly different amounts of salt, so you can have a recipe kind of taste different based on the type of butter you're using. So just to remove that variability, people like to kind of go this route of unsalted butter and a little bit of salt. All right, so we've got our, I almost said salt. We have our butter, our unsalted butter, and we're gonna add in our, this recipe uses mostly brown sugar and then a little bit of granulated sugar, so we're using 2/3 of a cup of light brown sugar. I had a little bit left over in this bag, and I think we'll have to open up another one. Let's zero out our scale and see how much that is. Yep. We're gonna open up our next bag. Now, I recommend using light brown sugar in this recipe just because there's already a lot of flavors going on, and the brown sugar adds a nice molasses flavor, but dark brown sugar has more molasses, and you really just don't need that much molasses flavor in this. You want other flavors to shine through, so really, I do recommend using light brown sugar if you have it. And the balance between the brown sugar and the granulated sugar is also going to impact the spread of the cookies. We're adding 133 grams here. So you really do want to have, you know, you don't want to swap out all the brown sugar for granulated sugar, or, you know, the granulated sugar helps the cookies spread a little bit more, and the brown sugar helps add moisture and makes the cookies chewy and soft. So the balance that's in the recipe really helps give them a great texture and helps them bake up the perfect way that I'm after, so make sure that you follow those ratios of brown sugar to granulated sugar. So we'll set that aside, and then we have just 1/4 cup of granulated sugar here. So we're gonna do 50 grams. Perfect, right on the money. And then we are going to cream this together quickly. So I'm not sure my butter I set it out about an hour ago, but it still felt a little bit firm to the touch, so we'll have to see. We might have popped this in the microwave for a little bit, but we're gonna try it first. We've got some comments from Jonathan in Texas. Hello again. Thank you for tuning in, Jonathan. It's so great to hear from you. And he said, these cookies sound delicious. They really are. They're like a little bit of a labor of love, but like, isn't all baking, right? They are really good. They're worth it. And then Michael R said, hello, back to you. Thank you for tuning in today. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. I always like to start on kind of a low speed, just so that way your butter isn't like, if you try to go in full speed, you can, I always have things flying out of my bowl. So we're gonna start low, just try to get that sugar incorporated. And the goal here is we're gonna eventually increase the speed, and mixing together your butter and your sugar helps incorporate air into the mixture, and you're gonna actually see the butter lighten in color, which is the goal. You wanna mix it on a medium-high speed for a minute or two until you see that color change. And once you get to that stage, the mixture should be like kind of smooth and creamy, and then you know that you're ready to move on. But it really is important if a recipe asks for you to cream together your butter and your sugar, that you take the time to properly do that. So I still have like a lot of bits of butter, like large bits of butter. So I am going to pop this in the microwave just for like 10 seconds to help that butter thaw just a little bit more, so we can really properly incorporate air into it. Give me 1 second. Gotta keep an eye on the clock. We also have a question from Michelle from Long Island. Hello, Michelle. 1 sec, grab my butter. Seconds looks perfect. Michelle said these look like they'll be fun to make with my niece. They are fun. They're a little bit messy, but I think that almost makes them more fun. So yes, I think it'd be a great project to make with just about anybody. And they're really so good. All right, so our butter now is getting kind of like smoother and creamier, which is what we want. And we're gonna keep mixing on a high speed. I have some chunks of brown sugar in here, which you wanna make sure you also get out all the way. So this also helps make sure that your sugar is nice and smooth, so that any of those, you don't end up with a giant chunk like that of brown sugar. I might just kind of push on these chunks with my little mixers. Because if you get just a patch of like solid brown sugar, it kind of like almost caramelizes, and not that brown sugar isn't delicious, but it's gonna kind of throw off the texture that we're after. And especially since we're stuffing these, we really need to be able to flatten them in our hands. So you can't really have like big chunks of brown sugar in here. If you do have chunks of brown sugar, just keep mixing it. Try to break them up with either your mixer or the back of a fork. That works really well too. Luckily my brown sugar, despite having some clumps, is really soft because I just opened the bag. And you do want to make sure your brown sugar is soft so that it can mix properly together into your recipe. There's nothing worse than like really hard, dry brown sugar that you forgot about in the back of your cabinet. And there are ways to revive it, like some people say like putting a moist towel in the microwave with it, heating it up, kind of like steaming some moisture back into it helps. And there's a few different tricks you can do. But in general, fresh brown sugar that's soft is the best and easiest to work with. We got a comment. Somebody started following me. Yeah. So you guys, if you don't already, I think there's like a follow button somewhere in this general area. And feel free to click that so that you never miss any time that I go live. It'll give you a little notification. Okay, I'm done screaming over my mixer. So my mixture has become much lighter in color. You can see it's almost like a white color, which is great. And it's nice and smooth. There's no chunks, exactly what we're after. I'm gonna grab a spatula quickly. What color? We'll go with red. Red seems kind of like a fall color. And I like to just scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl because sometimes like butter can get stuck down there or bits of brown sugar, and you just want to make sure everything is mixed together properly. So it looks like it is, so I'm not going to mix it again. We are good to go. All right, so next we're going to mix in 1/3 cup of pumpkin puree. That is a mouthful. And I'm gonna use my scale, just keep life easy. We are adding in, how many grams? 75 grams. Let's see, I'm gonna use this. That looks, we're gonna need a little bit more. We're right there, just a tiny bit more. A little bit too much. It's always just kind of a game, measuring game. Perfect. All right, you guys, so that's good. And then we're gonna add in just a tiny bit of vanilla extract, just a half a teaspoon. And while I normally love to add a lot of vanilla into my recipes, I'm usually pretty heavy-handed, especially in my frosting recipes. You don't want to add a ton of extra moisture to this recipe because the dough already can get a little bit sticky when you're trying to flatten it. So it actually is really helpful to add just the tiniest hint. You want to enhance those flavors, which vanilla always does, and kind of bring out those warm spices, but you just don't want it to get too wet. So that is great. We're going to quickly brush our powdered or our brown sugar off of us, and we're going to mix that pumpkin and vanilla into our butter mixture. So you don't have to worry about overmixing at this stage because we haven't added in our flour yet, but you really just want to mix until the pumpkin looks like it's incorporated fully into the butter mixture. So that looks good. So one little quick stir. I mix that in kind of on a medium speed. So our mixture kind of looks like this right now. It's looking good. And now I think all that's left to do is fold our dry ingredients or mix our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients. We're gonna go ahead and just tap that into there like that. Looking great. And we're gonna mix this on a low speed. So this is gonna be a pretty like soft, sticky dough like I mentioned earlier. So we're definitely gonna use our cookie scoop to scoop this together. One other thing, you guys, I always forget to mention, you can make this recipe, these are the spatulas that I'm using, and you can make this recipe either with a hand mixer like I'm using here. I love this one from KitchenAid. Kind of a KitchenAid fanatic with my mixers and my hand mixers. You can also use a stand mixer if you want to. I just like using a hand mixer when I can because I feel like it makes easier cleanup, and it's also easier for you guys to see what I'm doing and for filming too. I really only use a stand mixer if I have to for like meringue or a big batch of frosting, especially American buttercream. I would never want to make that by a hand mixer. So our dough is getting a little bit sticky, which is great. Let's see. Let me get the. I always play like the dangerous game of trying to get the batter out of the mixing blades by just kind of increasing the speed, and it does help sometimes. You just have to be so careful that you keep it low enough that it goes into the bowl. Nothing worse than doing that and having it go all over your counter, which I've absolutely done, or which I've absolutely done before. Now, if you want these to have a little bit more of a vibrant color, you can mix in a little bit of orange shell food coloring, which I'm gonna do because I really love, I like when people look at something and can tell immediately what it is. And even though these have a decent amount of pumpkin in them, you know, pumpkin really is such a mild color. It doesn't impart much color. So we're just gonna kind of fold that food coloring in. You can totally skip this step, you guys, though it's not necessary at all. And I'm also just gonna scrape the sides of the bowl to make sure that all of my flour is properly incorporated. Let's see, Tony says, hi, hello, Tony. It's great to have you here. You could also mix this in earlier in the process when you are mixing your butter together. To be honest, I kind of forgot until just now, which is why I'm doing it now. But that's okay, better late than never. And since we're doing it by hand, I'm not super worried about kind of over mixing the batter. This is kind of an arm workout though, I'll tell you that. I really want to make sure I get it evenly colored because I don't want there to be like streaks of food coloring. That really kind of ruins the vibe of the cookie. It's funny though, when you start making things from scratch, you realize like how much food coloring or things go into things that you eat that you don't even realize, but you kind of expect it to be there based on how you think things should look. Like I think we always think pumpkin things should be orange, but in reality, naturally they're not really orange if like you're mixing it into a baked good. All right, so that looks fantastic, evenly colored. Just a tiny hint, you guys, just to really give it a little bit more color, so it's not quite so brown. As much as I love fall baking with all the warm spices, like everything is just brown and it's just not always the cutest aesthetic. And you're eating with your eyes first, so I like things to try to look as good as they taste, you know? Always what I say. So we're gonna get out our cookie scoop now. I like to use the OXO Good Grips one. I have this in a bunch of different sizes. And let's see if I can get it out. It was more of a workout than I thought it would be. I used to keep these in my drawer under here, but I recently switched them back there. Kind of like redid the back of my kitchen to make it look a little bit more like a little studio, and I'm still getting used to where I put everything. So we're gonna go ahead and grab out a large tray I have here, or like not large, I guess medium-sized tray that I've lined with some parchment paper. And this is not our baking tray, which we're gonna use later, but this is just to pop it in the freezer. So I'm gonna scoop them kind of close to each other, and then once they're chilled, we'll flatten them and fill them with our cheesecake filling. So we're gonna go ahead and start scooping here. So we're doing about 3 tablespoon scoops here, maybe slightly less. And these don't have to be perfectly shaped because we're gonna flatten them out later, but you do want them to be pretty evenly sized just so that way they will bake up in about the same time. So we're just placing these on here, and I like using the smaller tray just because it's easier to pop into my freezer. Let's see, Will Applegate says hello, hello, hello right back to you. These cookies are serious, you guys. I'm just like smelling the dough and all those spices, and I'm getting distracted because it smells so good. So we should get about 10 cookies out of this. I'm making my scoops a little bit smaller than last time. And I think that's going pretty well. Well, the last time I've made these so many times, I can't even. They're definitely like a slightly challenging recipe because filling them is a little bit difficult, but in general though, they are totally worth it. So we're getting to the bottom of our batter here. I really scooped it. I think I'm actually gonna get 12 cookies out of this, which is crazy. I'm gonna get all the last little bits out of this bowl, so I'm gonna scrape it. Don't want any of this delicious cookie dough to go to waste. I really am gonna get every last bit, you guys. All right. This last one might be a little bit bigger than the others. Let's see. Ta-da! Perfect. Okay. And then we have a little bit, sometimes if I have just like a tiny bit of dough left over, I might actually add a little bit to some of these that I could use a little bit more. I'll either make like a mini cookie and bake it separately so it doesn't like burn, and kind of eat it as a snack. That's probably my favorite thing to do with leftover cookie dough. Also, you guys, you could totally double this recipe if you wanted to. It takes a little bit of time to fill all the cookies, but the quantities are super. You would just double the quantity, make double the volume, and you can also freeze these cookies, freeze the cookie dough. There's a lot of options, and I actually share all of the make-ahead instructions on chillsweets.com, so if you have questions about that, be sure to check out the recipe. I walk through everything. So we've sufficiently cleaned out our bowl, which is great. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these into the freezer to chill, or sorry, not the freezer, the fridge. I'm gonna pop these, I'm already losing it, and it's what, 10:30 in the morning. We're gonna pop these in the fridge for actually a couple hours because the dough really needs time to chill, and even though you would think, oh, look, we just pop it in the freezer and it'll be faster, you don't want the butter to get so hard and frozen that you can't flatten it. So it's a real fine line. You can chill them maybe for 1 to 2 hours, it depends on how cold your fridge is, but you really just need them to get cold enough that you can like handle them and they won't be really sticky. So 1 to 2 hours in the fridge, pop these bad boys in there, and then we're gonna work on our cheesecake filling. Kind of in the back of my fridge just because it's the coldest there, so it'll probably go the fastest to chill them. And then another thing I want to note, you guys, I don't know if you saw this, but there's no eggs in this recipe, and really the pumpkin almost replaces the eggs because it helps them kind of like bake up and fluff up and gives them a really nice light texture, and kind of brings things together. So no eggs in this recipe. So if you have an egg allergy, it's actually a pretty great cookie recipe for you. So many hellos. Hello, Carries Jenkins. I feel like I'm saying your name wrong, I'm so sorry, but hello to you, tuning in from the UK, that's awesome. And Sunny D just started following me, thank you. And Tony says she loves cheesecake filling, then you're gonna love these cookies, it's so good. Susie also says hello, hi Susie. Casually drinking my matcha to stay hydrated and caffeinated. And let's get going on this cheesecake filling, you guys. So we're gonna swap out our bowls. I'm gonna use this bowl. You know, I'm gonna use this bowl actually. I'm actually gonna put this one in the sink behind me just to keep our workstation clear. And we're gonna add 6 ounces of cream cheese into our bowl. Use this spatula this time. So it's really basically 3/4 of a block of cream cheese. And sometimes I get nervous like leaving cream cheese out to come to room temperature. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but you can leave cream cheese out at room temperature for like up to 4 hours, I think is like what food experts say is safe. But I like never do that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pop this in the microwave quickly to bring it to room temperature, and make sure that our cream cheese stays like good. So wrap up the rest of our cream cheese, put it in the fridge quickly. And then we'll pop this in the fridge. Not the fridge, the microwave. You guys, I'm losing it. One sec. So you can heat that in the microwave for, I'd say 20 to 30 seconds on like a medium-high speed. I'm gonna go ahead and mix off our beaters because we're gonna need to whip up this cheesecake filling to kind of give it a little bit of volume. And just to properly incorporate that sugar in there. You don't want it to be just like a block of cream cheese in the cookies. You want it to be like light and fluffy, like what we think of when we think of cheesecake, or at least what I think of when I think of cheesecake. So we're gonna rinse these off quickly. Let's see. A Courtney V says these cookies look and sound amazing. Thank you. They are super tasty. I wish you guys could have one of the ones I'm making today, but you'll just have to make a batch at home. So we'll rinse these off quickly, you guys. Try them, and then we'll get going on whipping this up and we'll grab our cheesecake. All right, not cheesecake, cream cheese. I'm already just like so in the mindset of cheesecake, can you tell? Okay. All right, so that looks great. It's gonna be so much easier to mix up now. And we'll just push these into place quickly. We're just gonna, I'm gonna mix this just to make sure it's the right temperature, and that it's nice and creamy, because that's what we want. So mixing at a medium-high speed here. You can see that it really mixes together nice, it's smooth, it's creamy, it's everything that we want from our cream cheese. So next we're gonna add in just a little bit of sugar, 1/4 of a cup. Let's go ahead and weigh this just to make our life easier. We're adding in 50 grams of sugar here. Awesome. And then we're gonna mix this together, and we're also gonna add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. We can add a little bit more to this because we're gonna be wrapping the dough around the vanilla or the cheesecake filling. So we don't have to be quite as careful with the texture. We're also gonna freeze this cheesecake filling so it really is easier to wrap the dough around. So we'll mix on low at first to start getting that sugar and vanilla incorporated, and then we'll mix on medium-high until we really feel like that sugar is properly worked into our cream cheese. So The vanilla smells so good. I love baking and all the smells that kind of come with it. Also, when you actually bake these cookies, your house or your apartment or wherever you live is going to smell so good. So just prepare yourself for that. It's truly, these cookies are just like amazing in a sense of, in every sense. Smell, taste, texture, it's got it all. All right. So our cheesecake filling looks good. I'm gonna just do a quick stir around the bowl, again, to make sure there's not just bits of straight up cheesecake hanging out, and I wanna make sure that it's nice and smooth. And it is, it looks really nice. I'll show you guys quickly. Looks great. So we're gonna go ahead and do, if you make these cookies and you end up with like 9 cookies or 10 cookies or 11 cookies, that's fine, depending on what scooper you're using. You just want them to be like uniform in size, and then with that in mind, you just want to make the same number of cheesecake dollops, because that way you'll have the right amount of filling inside of each one. So we're gonna get out our other scooper. So this is again, this is a 1.5 tablespoon OXO scooper. It's the same one as below, just slightly smaller. If you click on that link, it has all the different sizes as options. And we're just gonna do some little scoops here. So it's 1, 2, I think these might actually be a little bit big. I probably should make them a little bit smaller. Let's see. So I'm actually probably gonna do about a tablespoon of filling each. I'm gonna have to make this one a little bit smaller. That's like half the fun of baking though. And you know, you can always adjust as you go. So if something does end up being too big or too small, you can always re-roll it or take away or add a little bit of dough and you're fine. It's kind of just about recognizing it as you're doing it and making corrections as needed. All right. So you want these, even though I'm kind of scooping them into like mounds, you kind of want them almost to be like, they can be mounds, but like a little bit thinner, because you're going to be wrapping the dough around them, and kind of like the more compact they are, the easier they'll be to wrap your dough around. So they kind of flatten out though as you scoop them, so it kind of like falls into place perfectly anyways. All right. So these are looking great. We're going to be a little bit short, but that's okay because we have that giant dollop that really is like 2 fillings. So like I was mentioning earlier, we're just going to scoop. This is not going to be the cleanest thing I've ever done in terms of it looking super nice, but it's going to work functionally really well. We're going to go ahead and do a little scoop here. We're going to salvage this little bit that escaped. Luckily, my countertops are super clean, just cleaned my entire kitchen, so that's always nice. Not always fun though when you clean it and then you bake and you have like another mess, but that's okay. And then we're going to end up dividing this one into a couple little ones too. So we've got 12 little cheesecake balls here, which look great. We're going to take a little bit from this one too. I think this one's a little bit big. And we're going to just scrape that on top of the other one. And then we're going to pop this into the freezer. Perfect, you guys. Amazing. They're all about the same size now. Some of them are a tiny bit bigger. You also could use like a tablespoon measurer. You can really use whatever you think is best. You can also use, last time I made these, I used just 2 spoons and I'd scoop with one, push off one, and that actually worked really well too. So you don't have to have like the super scooper to make these, really just whatever works best for you. So we've got our dollops all ready to go here. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these into the freezer quickly to let them start to set. I'm actually gonna flatten them a little bit before I do that. I kind of like to do like a little swirl, just for any of the ones that are kind of like tall. Awesome. Looking good, looking good. Into the freezer. And then I again, you guys line these trays just with a little bit of parchment paper, because we're going to be kind of like peeling them off and handling them later. And it's so much easier to peel them off a parchment lined pan than like something else. And again, using just a small tray so it fits into my freezer. I'm actually tempted to make like a second batch of these. Number 1, because they're so good, and then number 2, I kind of I want to bring some to my sister because these are so delicious. I always like tell you guys this, but she just had a baby, so I've been bringing them kind of like treats to help get them through their week and have easy snacks on hand. And these are so good, I feel like she would love them. So I think I am going to make an extra batch and bring them over to her. So it's also like you have time, because in the time it takes to make one batch, let them chill, you really have enough time to like make another before you have to start like folding and baking them. Let's see. I've got some interesting comments from somebody. I feel like I missed a couple of questions. Let me go back and just check it out. Dora E said, are you using AmeriColor orange gel food coloring? Fantastic, heck yes I am. I love AmeriColor. I also like Chef Master. I think they are my two favorite gel food colorings. I have a giant bottle. These things last for forever, and I feel like I'm going to use this a lot this fall. But you can get them in smaller sizes. They have little like tiny, I think 0.75 ounce bottles, and then they have medium sized bottles that are about 4 ounces. So if you don't bake quite as much as I do, you can get a smaller size. But this stuff works fantastically. If you are going to color them, definitely use gel food coloring and not liquid. Liquid can kind of throw off the consistency of the dough, and it already is kind of like a sticky dough, so if you added more moisture, it's just like not what you need. So really, if you're going to color them, definitely use gel food coloring. Let's see, Michelle said, will these freeze okay after they are finished? So I think that you're talking about once they are like filled, maybe before you bake them, and yes, you can totally freeze them after you flatten them out, fill them, roll them in, I guess you'd probably wait to roll them in cinnamon sugar, but you can totally freeze them and then take them out, let them, I would say transfer them to the fridge overnight, and then bake them from the fridge in the oven, and maybe add on an extra minute if they're super cold. But yeah, that should work fantastically. Jerlene said, what other extracts can you add to the cream cheese? Great question, Jerlene. You can add just about anything. I mean, you could add hazelnut extract, coconut extract if you wanted to. Really anything that you think would like taste okay with pumpkin. I always like default to lemon, but I think that would actually be kind of creepy with the pumpkin and all the warm spices. But I'm trying to think of other extracts that would go well in there. You could also add like spices. You could also add like cinnamon to make a cinnamon cheesecake filling. A lot of options. You can definitely get creative with that. Anything that you think would go with a flavor combo. Let's see. Tony said, my cat meme is watching you bake. That's pretty silly. Love a good cat. I don't have any pets, but we definitely want to get one soon. Ayonda Schrager said, please don't touch your nose while you're working with food. Thank you. Don't worry, Ayonda. I'm literally just making these at home, and I have allergies, so I use my wrists sometimes. But if that's super concerning to you, when you make food at home, you can just not do that yourself, and then you'll be good to go. So luckily what I'm making here really isn't going to be like sold anywhere. It's really just for me and my friends and my family, so I don't think that it's too big of a problem. Let's see, we got some weird messages. We got another message from Ayonda. I hear you loud and clear, Ayonda. Don't worry. We are good to go in my kitchen. This is literally like my home kitchen, you guys. Always just making recipes and testing things for fun here. And I really just mostly develop recipes to share online for other people to try. And then I also film content for my different social media platforms, so I'm not ever like selling things to people, which is why like I don't have to follow traditional food protocols like wearing gloves when preparing things and things like that. So I think a lot of people don't really understand kind of how my business works, but that is what I do here. And I am so excited because it lets me do fun things like this, like baking with you guys live, which I love doing. So I almost forgot, you guys, we still need to make our cinnamon sugar coating for our cookies. So we're gonna go ahead and grab a small bowl here. I'm gonna grab a slightly smaller bowl. And we're gonna mix in our sugar, our cinnamon, and a little bit of ginger. So I'm actually gonna make a double batch of this because I'm gonna end up making a double batch of the batter anyways. So we're gonna add in 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar, or 132 grams. And then we'll add in our cinnamon, and I really like to add in, let's see, I like to add in ground ginger as well, and I just enjoy it because I'm using my 1/4 teaspoon here, which I'm gonna have to use a bunch because my other teaspoons have vanilla on them and are wet, and I don't want to have to dry them off. So we're gonna do double the amount that we normally do, and then double the amount of ground ginger. The ground ginger really just makes these cookies pop. It's on the outside of the cookie, so it almost makes it like a pumpkin snickerdoodle. It like is so good, and so I really recommend using ginger on this outside coating. It just really, it also like, it's one of the first things that you smell as you go to bring the cookie to your face. So I just really enjoy that. All right, so we're gonna just give this a quick whisk as well, get those spices incorporated, all in that sugar, and then we can set this aside. And once we roll our cookies, we are going to be ready to roll them in this delicious coating and then bake them up. So you really just want to mix until the cinnamon is evenly distributed throughout, and the ginger, and it looks nice and smooth just like this. So that looks perfect. And I think with that, oh, I can smell the ginger. I think with that, we are kind of ready to go to start making our next batch, you guys. I think I might let you guys go because it's just gonna be kind of like repeating the process I just did. But don't worry, I'll be sharing the cookies on my Instagram once they're like rolled out so you can see what they look like. And I'm also gonna be sharing a post on these cookies on Friday on Instagram, so you guys can see the process, and, or like if you also go look at my website at chelsweets.com, I have great process photos of how to flatten out the cookies, fill them, fold the dough, and everything. So you guys are gonna be on your own for the next part of this recipe, but I think that you guys have all the tools you need to make these perfectly. Let's see, Jerlene asked, would nutmeg or cardamom work too? Yeah, so if you have if you really love a specific warm spice, you can totally use that instead of the ginger, or add it in with the ginger. Like I love nutmeg too, so you can definitely pop that in there. And cardamom I haven't tried, but I'm sure that would be delicious. So yeah, you can just add it in quantities that you add it to taste, I guess. So make sure that it's like not too pungent. But yeah, I think that'll add a really nice complexity to these cookies. I think that's a fantastic idea. Let's see, Jonathan from Texas said, how much cinnamon would you recommend adding to the cream cheese filling? Think about the volume of it. I would add a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, I think. I think that would add enough flavor and enough kind of like specks and color to make it evident that there's cinnamon in there in terms of looks and taste. I think that'd be great. But if you really love cinnamon, you could probably add up to a teaspoon and it would be great. But there's already like cinnamon in the dough and cinnamon in the cinnamon sugar filling or coating, so probably a 1/2 teaspoon is like a good amount, if I had to guess. Have not tested it, but that would be my best guess. All right, you guys, so thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I had so much fun making these today, and I can't wait to bake them. Again, if you want to make these at home, the recipe is up on chelsweets.com. You can either search on there for pumpkin cheesecake cookies, or you can even just Google Chelsweets pumpkin cheesecake cookies, and the recipe should pop up. The recipe is also linked to my Instagram stories, so you can find it there. And I'll be doing another live next week at 10 a.m. PST on Wednesday. So haven't decided quite what I'm gonna bake yet, but it'll definitely be something like fall inspired, I think. Maybe some pumpkin cupcakes or something like that. We'll see, TBD. If you have any ideas, you can definitely comment them to the side here. I would love to hear them. Or if you have anything in particular like apple, or I feel like apple and pumpkin are always what I think of when I think of fall baking. But if you have anything in particular you want to see me bake, I would love to try it and hear your suggestions. I'm always open to those. I usually have a pretty long list of things that I want to make or recipes I want to try. But I always love getting your input as well. It never hurts. Julian says she can't wait to try making these. I'm so excited to hear that. This really is probably, to date, my favorite cookie recipe. And I feel like I say that every time I come up with a new cookie recipe, but these really are just like fantastic. And such a like quintessential fall recipe. They're just so good. So I really hope you guys do make them. And if you do make them, be sure to you can message me on Instagram or tag me, or use the hashtag ChelSweets so I can see your creations, and hopefully you guys will love them just as much as I do. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I always have fun with you guys, and I will see you next Wednesday around 10 a.m. PST. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I really hope you guys bake these cookies. All right, you guys, until next time, see you later.